Hi, my name is Adrian Dixon. I'm the pastor of Northside Community Church, and I want to welcome you to a conversation on race and faith. With the events that we've been seeing in our country over the last couple of months, as a pastor, one of the things that's been on my heart and mind is thinking about, as a church, how do we respond to the things that we're seeing? And I remember the message that I gave shortly after the death of George Floyd and thinking through what do you say to a congregation of believers? And the one thing that kept coming to my mind was the need to listen, and specifically to listen to the stories of the black and brown people in our congregation, which has led us to this moment. And what I'd like to do is just welcome these folks who are going to be a part of this conversation on race and faith today. Frank and Patty Pritchett, Crawford and Latasha Moser, and Jermaine and Nicole Sellers, and their new son Lincoln. And one of the things that we are really hoping to do is just have an honest conversation about the times in which we're living, an honest conversation about how to listen to one another and how to walk with one another through these times. And so I really appreciate you joining us. I hope that you'll be able to take some things from this that'll be helpful in your relationships, and ultimately that all of us, if we'll really commit to hearing one another and walking with one another, that we may see some really beautiful things come out of these sorrowful times that we're living in. So thank you for joining us. One of the first ways that I want to begin our conversation is just thinking through and asking you guys how you're doing, how you're feeling. As a church, we've said we're committed to walking this journey together, these times together. And if we really want to walk with each other, if we really want to find out how one another's doing, then maybe the best place to begin is how are you guys feeling, and how are you feeling particularly over the last couple of months with things that have been happening?
I'll start off, I guess. My thoughts or feelings, mainly when that happened, hurt, sad, disappointed. Just to see these things still going on. I know they may have more experience than I have about this, but just in my 30 years or 32 years at this point, just seeing these things happen throughout my life, and I know throughout my parents' life, and people like to talk about, when Barack Obama was elected and how they thought things were great at that time, but, years later we're still facing these same issues, and, the same issues from the Civil Rights March and those things. Just, as you indicated, I do have a new son. My wife was pregnant at the time, just thinking, I'm going to have the same conversation with him that my parents had, basically saying, try to comply with law enforcement, do everything they say just so you make it home safely. And you may be hanging out with friends of a different race or different background, Caucasian friends, and you can't do everything they do. You have to be aware of that. It's sad to me to think, seeing that on TV, that, years later I'm still having the same conversation with my son. So that's really how I felt during that time, and still feel that way at this point. But that's just my feelings.
Yeah. How are you guys?
Good.
How have y'all been feeling the last couple of months with everything that's been going on?
I've been, I was sad at what happened, and I saw a lot of stuff happen years ago, and the same things are still going on now. I saw it. I'm from Alabama, and I might have saw a lot more than you are, much younger.
Yeah.
I was a kid, when the march came through. But I know when it came through, I remember my father saying, "We're not going to join it." But I remember some families took the kids out of school and went to the march in Selma,
Mm-hmm.
And I remember a couple of young men around in my neighborhood. They never found who murdered them, but they found they was murdered,
Mm-hmm.
And they never found that, they was accused somebody ran over them, and but they really never pursued it,
Mm-hmm.
Even I had a brother, he got killed too, and he was found dead in the road, but they said the car, but he wasn't ran over because they said later on that the guy what did the autopsy said he was he had a screwdriver broken off in his inside. And we didn't put it on white or black, but there was a lot of anger going around, in the early 70s, and that happened in 1970. Yeah, I was 15, and
Frank, when you see things that happen like they did with George Floyd, does it bring back a lot of those experiences that you had? Yeah,
that bring a lot of stuff back. But and when I saw it with Floyd, because me myself personally, if it had been black police did that to George Floyd, I'd have felt the same way if white ones had did it. Mm-hmm. They should have been held accountable. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't walk around free. Yeah. If he was white and black cops did it, they should be held accountable. Yeah. They shouldn't walk around free. If nobody do that to any human being, no matter what race or color, they shouldn't never have a job in the law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And they should go to jail for it. That's my feeling over it. Period. Yeah. It hurted to see the guy begging for his life. And you got officers standing over him, and hey, if I was there, I probably did the same thing they did, nothing. But if I knew like I knew now, I'd have just snatched the guy up off him and told him, hey, you got to give him a break now.
Right. Thank you for sharing. Patty, how about for you? What's the last couple of months been like?
It's been hard because there's a lot of emotions that goes with everything, and sadness, angry because of what we saw. I raised 2 boys, and I have my stepson. And yes, you do have to have this conversation with your sons, about what's out there in order for them to survive. And even now, with my son being 38, I still try to have that same conversation. The only thing is, he's his own man now. So he's going to react maybe the way I don't want him to. But, it was kind of hard. And you would have thought that since Martin Luther King, that with everything that the black people had done, the marches and everything that had gone on, that we would have come to a better place than where we are right now. But it seems like things are starting to crop back up again, and things are getting set back into motion again. And I'm fearful, because, I already lost one son, not to, anything like this, but I've lost a child. And when I see something like this happen to somebody else's child, it brings up a lot of emotions. And I can sympathize, I can empathize with them, and then I get angry for what the person did to that person. It doesn't matter how old, The other day when that little boy, when that guy went across the yard and shot that little boy, I was angry. Why would you do such a thing, But, we're dealing with people that have different ideas and different thoughts and that different prejudices that are going on. And I don't even know how we can even come to end result, a goal to even try to fix this. But I do think that sometimes the higher ups that are in government need to help out a little bit more than what they're doing,
And maybe not incite some hatred that has been going on. But
Well, Nicole, I think about, and then Crawford and Latasha, we'll come to you guys. In preparing for that message a few months ago, right after the murder of George Floyd, I came across a quote that said, when you love someone who's different than you, and they categorize differences as being race, ethnicity, culture, when you love someone who's different than you begin to see the prejudices. And that really stood out to me, and being someone who's married to a black man, I wonder, what has this been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, not only am I white, but I'm from Montana, so I wasn't exposed to a lot of different races my whole growing up years. And so even just during our dating years, there was things that he would say, like, oh, I would never travel to like Mississippi or other southern states. And I'm like, why not? I would love to travel like to all the states. And he's like, it's dangerous there for me. And I'm like, how can it be that dangerous? You know, I was just completely ignorant of the fact that it is still such a hatred for different races, like, because I didn't grow up learning that. And so it was just so like blindsiding to me. And I talk to my parents about it, and my mom's like, what? Like, why would that happen? And I'm like, I'm learning that it's still such a hot button issue and such a prevalent thing that that we in Montana just didn't really ever consider. And that's doesn't make it okay, you know, like, just because we never had to think about it. It's just, it wasn't in our face, I guess. But I mean, it also, so the last 2 months I've felt kind of like, like sad and angry, probably similar to most other people. But then the protests that followed, I was like, I don't know if that's going to help the cause, because people will twist it and make it seem like they're rough and, you know, they're not good people, you know, like people will twist it. And then the riots happened, which made it easier to have that segue into, oh, they're not good people, you know. And I mean, I think the riots took it too far and maybe took the message the wrong direction. And so that made me worry. And also then I have the thoughts like, how's that going to help your cause? But just the fact that I say that's your cause, I mean, I think that's a problem, because it should be my cause also. So that's kind of how I've been feeling.
No, I
just
appreciate
conflicted.
Yeah. Crawford, Latasha, you guys have got teenage daughters. What's it been like for them, if you're comfortable speaking for them, and what has it been like for you guys the last couple of months?
Well, as for me, how I've been feeling when the George Floyd happened, I was just shocked that that police officer could just hold himself down on that man's neck, knowing that there's a camera on you and you don't even care. You were there. You just did it anyway. I could see, but you didn't think anyone was looking. But you just did it and you didn't care. And that just made me feel so sad that, he just doesn't even care, that he's killing this man. And, and then it just made me feel angry later. But it's like, something has to be done about this. This is not right. He needs to be prosecuted. And, and then also on social media, it's bringing up, people are showing their true colors, and I'm starting to see that. And I never would have thought some of the people felt the way that they felt. And they have every right to, but I just had no idea. And so it's been shocking. This is 2020 clarity vision, and my vision is very clear now. So, but, I still love everyone. I'm a Christian, and I'm a Christian first, and that's what I'm going to hold to God's unchanging hand. And That's all I can do is just pray and love everyone. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. Crawford, how about for you?
Well, you know, I'm not a good talker, but I mean, going back to the George Floyd thing is more of kind of saying, I don't know how a human being can do that to somebody else's human being, you know, another human being, and not realize, you know, that you're actually killing somebody. But I mean, it's just, you know, that was kind of hard to look at, and especially, yeah, it was caught on camera and everybody got to see it and everything. And I don't know if anything is, you know, and, you know, he got to walk free for, you know, why he's doing it until something gets prosecuted or anything. But I don't even think really have heard anything from him saying, you know, his side of the story. Well, not even his side of the story that, you know, he's sorry or anything like that. But I know he probably can't talk right now. But it's just kind of hard to see that another human being can do that to another human being, and it's not it wasn't an act of war that he had a gun or a weapon towards him to do something that can make you have to take actions like that to kind of, you know, do that. But so it's, you know, it's kind of seemed kind of angry that people are still able, you know, doing this kind of stuff. And for me, I mean, it's just from where I grew up in western North Carolina, and my dad, I mean, he was in the military. My uncles were in the military, and even talking with them, listening to the things that they had to go through, and, you know, fighting for their country and what they had to deal with, even in the military stuff going on. I mean, you know, it just brings up why people, you know, would think or want to do that to you. You know, do that to another person. And even my dad, I mean, I can't really remind, the only talks that I guess my dad taught me, and me growing up, I mean, in our county it was probably less than 5% black or whatever. So I mean, it wasn't, I might have had three or four people in my class, or maybe 2 or 1 at sometimes. But, you know, my dad never, I mean, he always talked about, you know, do what's right, carry yourself right. You don't have to worry about anything else. You know, if you act right, carry yourself right, don't worry about everything will be taken care of. Now, there are going to be people that's going to look at you because your color and think that's, you know, not going to like you because of color or anything. But I mean, there are people also that don't like Christians or anything like that. That's, you know, it's always going to be something. So it's going to have to depend on how you react to that attitude. So, because growing up, my sport was baseball. I remember 10U, we had a team, and the guy that got me started playing baseball, he was a black guy coach, and, you know, he got us all together and we started playing, and we had the #1 team, and half of the team was black or whatever, and, you know, we had white guys on there, and for every year, the county has sent, you know, to go play in the States or whatever and everything. We won that year, but for some reason that year, and everybody knew what it was, they didn't want a black coach or to represent that county somewhere else. And, you know, you just get this, you know, feeling that, all right, there's people out there that's like that, that's their mentality. So, and even still growing up, I mean, I had to deal with playing high school baseball was, you know, even in baseball, I mean, we only had, it was maybe 1 or 2 blacks that's playing the sport. And I remember this one instance was high school playing American Legion baseball. Had a, you know, everybody was getting the Buzz haircut that time. I mean, this was what, 90, 89 or whatever, you know, everybody's getting a cut. And so everybody was going to this one barbershop.
And so I said, they was telling me, come on, we'll go down, he'll do the same cut for you or whatever. So I got one of my friends, rode with him, he took me down there one Saturday. Walk in, sit down, this guy's already cut this, my friend's hair, but he was taking me just to bring me down there. Sitting down into the seat, sitting there, and I guess he noticed my friend, which is, he was a white guy or whatever, he sees that he's already got his haircut, but he looks at me and says, we don't cut your kind of hair here. And, I'm sitting there, it's like, okay, and I'm up here saying, well, my hair is the same as his. And, and you're still thinking, what is that? And then, it dawns onto you, okay, I see what it is. So I get up and leave. And my buddy comes on with me. He didn't say anything to the guy and just walked out. So getting back to school, all my friends, in which I can say all my baseball buddies or whatever, I mean, we kind of hung tight. It didn't matter what color you were or whatever. It was a tight group. And, I didn't say anything. I guess my buddy did. He started going around. And all my other friends were starting saying, come up and ask me, so what happened or whatever. And next thing I know, it's like, they're not going to get a haircut. Next thing I know, the coach for the American Legion, which was a teacher there, he was he was a former Marine or whatever. He's from hit place or whatever. He goes down there and talks to the guy. And he says, and comes back to me and says, go back down there, he'll cut your hair. I said, well, if he didn't want to do it then, I don't want to deal with it now. So, but after that, it was like, okay, you lost business through, from other, guys. And I mean, in our area was, you could see it. I mean, more racial kind of things, even. And I saw, even going back, I know I'm skipping around in here, but it's like, I'm sorry, but my coach, and I really do, my first coach, which was a black coach, but also my American Legion coach, he was, I guess, more personable or cared about the person, not your color, because, he always taught that you should always show on the field or whatever. Don't worry about what's going around or anything. Y'all are, this is your team. And I guess that's the kind of mentality I kind of had. I don't care what you do to me, I'm going to prove myself. And I know you don't supposed to have to prove yourself, but I'm going to, take care of it on the field. And because even for our American Legion, and we knew this area was always bad, and they going up there and playing baseball, American Legion, that you have fans around the outside walking, one of the black players around, he done got out on third base, and one of their fans is going to walk as he's walking around the field, calling them names and all of this, stuff or whatever, and other people allowing this to go on. And it was just, seeing that kind of stuff going on and whatever. But our coach always said, don't worry about that, prove it on the field. And we always did. I mean, we always had a great, as I said, baseball team. We always stuck up for each other. One of us got in, it didn't matter. I mean, it was always, bad point about it though, our bus got broke down up there, and the next day they went up there, we had painted stuff all over and the windows and stuff brought out. And I mean, what some people would do like I said, we only had 2 or 3 blacks on the team and the rest was white, and that mentality is gonna take it off on everybody, everybody. So, I mean, that's my kind of growing up or whatever, seeing stuff like, that happen, and you would think as it would get better, but, it's just that mentality, going on. So,
I appreciate you guys sharing. I've known you guys for different lengths of time, and just hearing some stories that I've never heard you guys share before. And Nicole, you mentioned something along the lines of the riots, and I think that for people who these kinds of conversations make them feel uncomfortable, it's very easy to jump to how others are responding to avoid talking about the topics. And I know for a lot of politicians and commentators, I would even say for some well-meaning Christians, they look at the death of George Floyd, they look at the deaths of Breonna Taylor and this whole history in our nation, and then they bring it alongside of what you hear is black on black crime and the breakdown of the black family. And there's this charge that's thrown out about, well, wait a minute, you get so worked up over this, but the black on black crime over here that no one's speaking about or no one seems to be addressing. And I think for some, there's an unwillingness there to want to have the conversation, so they look at other things that are going on to try and justify not having the hard conversations. I guess I wonder from your perspectives, helping people who either aren't willing to hear that there is a difference between black on black crime, the breakdown of the black family, and a history of racial prejudice in our nation that dates 200 years plus. I guess what would be helpful for people in these camps to hear in terms of the differences between the two? I mean, how would you help somebody who maybe brings that up as somehow this equalizer to what happened to George Floyd or Breonna Taylor? How would you help them see that there's a difference between what's happening racially versus what's happening in these large cities or in certain families?
It's a tough one. I can only think of going back to slavery, and which was many years ago, and the separation of the fathers and the family being separated from their family. So you broke the family up right there. Then you turn around, you use him to father other children with somebody else because you want him to be a slave on somebody else's plantation. And then you have the mothers who have children whose babies is ripped right out of their arms. I mean, we see it on TV. We see the slavery movies on TV, and that stuff has happened. We might not like to admit it, but it has happened. And I think so far as the breakdown of the black family goes back to there. And I know some people will sit there and say, but that was like how many years ago? But when it's happened over and over and over, and it carries from generation to generation to generation, I think it brings about a mental attitude, so to speak, of when things happen now, our thoughts might go back there, And I think that then it starts making people angry and what have you and everything. And so far as the difference on black and black crime is there's a lot of videotaping that's going on right now. So when it's, say, the police or it's a white person doing it to a black person or what have you, things are being videotaped and we're seeing it with our eyes. And there's a difference when you see things and then when you hear something. It's a big difference there. And so far as black on black crime, I get angry. I don't know about anybody else, but when I get up in the morning and I watch news every single morning there has been some black on black crime going on the night before. And when I see that, it makes me angry that I see that our young black men are out there. But then a lot of times, because of the breakdown of the families, we don't have daddies in the homes anymore that are helping our young sons out there. And I was a single parent at one time for about 3 years, and my children's father wasn't really there when he should have been there, so I had to play mommy and daddy both. And then when Frank and I got married, then, he tried to step in, which was a little bit hard because their father was still living, and he still was in the background doing this, But I think that, so far as the black on black crime, yeah, we do still get angry about it, but probably because we're not actually seeing it, we react differently, and we be silent. We keep our mouths shut until it happens to you. And then when it happens to you, it's a whole different ball game. Then you're going to get out there and you're going to protest and what have you and everything. And to go back to what Nicole was saying about the protesting, you have your peaceful protesters in the daytime. In the evening time, there's a different group that comes out there. And from what I've heard also, that there are some troublemakers that get up in the mix. And then they start things too, and then next thing you know, things get out of control. But when the George Floyd thing happened, I think it hit a tipping point. I think it got explosive then. And I think you're dealing with young people now. This isn't Martin Luther King's days where it's a peaceful march. You know, you want to keep your mouth shut. John Lewis, when he got beaten, it was on TV. You know, these young kids nowadays aren't doing that. And another thing about the marches that's going on now too is that there's a lot of diversity there. You got a lot of young white kids, black kids, Spanish kids, what have you, that they're all standing up for one another. You know, and that we're not going to take this anymore. And sometimes kids can get a little angrier than what Martin Luther King and them did back in the day, you know what I'm saying? You know, so I think that, our reactions are different. Mm-hmm. Our reactions are different, and it doesn't make it any better, but the thing of it is that, like I said, that something needs to be done, I think that, so far as the prejudice, this is a different day and time, and I think that we need to, talk, come to the table. Our higher-ups need to really step in and really let us know that they're there to help us, and maybe we can, try to, eliminate this black-on-black crime, and also eliminate the other prejudices, the racial unrest that's going on. Maybe we can help eliminate that.
I have something I'd like to say about that, if I may. You were talking about how, George Floyd happened and people are upset. Then the person, some people think, well, it's black-on-black crime and all of this and that. Well, to me, it's like a little child. Like, okay, Johnny was talking. Johnny gets in trouble. Johnny says, well, David was doing it. It doesn't matter. It's wrong. It's wrong. Mm-hmm. I don't care. It's wrong. Black people doing it, white people doing it, whatever. Sometimes I think it's just an excuse for the person to feel, the point, to feel their to cover up their prejudice. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe it's not, but I'm just saying, to me, it feels that way. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to check yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's all I have to say.
And I guess you was asking about our daughters, in which I do see this a lot, even going on with field trips with them and everything when they was growing up. Like you were saying, the younger generation, I think they're more inclusive of everybody and everything. You still have some that's, if you get taught in your home to be like that, that's where you're going to grow up to be. But I do see, like, our girls, they always saying, because they get on, I guess, I don't know about saying black or what, it's a person or whatever. So, it's not, they're treating that person wrong or whatever, it's a person. And like I say, they more inclusive of everybody instead of seeing the person as a color or something like that. So I do give, for them, that generation, I do see a lot of change. And like you said, they are more, they more vocal, kind of more energized to want to do something and stuff like that. So I just,
And that goes back to the way we were raised.
Right.
The way we're raising our children. If you raise them without prejudice and everything, then they'll grow up without prejudice. I went to an all-white school, basically, a handful of black people and a handful of Spanish people, and so it was no big deal for me. I didn't experience a lot of things that my husband had experienced when he was growing up. So when he started talking about some things, I was like, well, wow, you know. I didn't know some of these things. I remember the riots in Newark, but that was away from me. You know, you got to see it on TV, and I was young, and it wasn't as real, you know. But I think if a lot of us would go ahead and maybe our grandparents might have been prejudiced, but you know, if you knew that your grandparents were prejudiced or your parents were prejudiced, then it's up to us to raise up a different generation.
Well,
You know?
I mean, you're saying, even the guys I grew up with playing baseball, you know, I guess, you know, by spending more time with somebody and actually hearing them, talking with them, you kind of get that bond. I don't care what kind of color you are, because I knew some of the buddies on the team, you know, their dads, yeah, they'll probably be, you know, I ain't gonna say what meat at a meeting or whatever or something like that. But, you know, you knew that by talking. But long as you're with their kid on a team or playing basketball or whatever, and you're doing the same and common goal, trying to get where their kid, oh, they're gonna, you know, it's treating you fine or whatever. But even their kid, you know, getting to know you, they never treated me kind of like way they were, and you know, I never felt that from a kid. But you know, don't sit me along with the parents or something like that. But you know, I never felt scared or anything. But you know, it's just how those, I mean, just be with somebody, you know, learn with them and what they're going through. And I mean, you know, it's just.
I think a lot of times the black on black crime is treated differently than the white on black crime, mainly because of, I mean, I think it almost highlights the prejudices, because it's just not reported on, or it's not videotaped like you were saying, or I guess recorded. We don't videotape anymore, but you know, so I think that almost highlights the prejudice, because it's like, oh, it just happens all the time, every day. So people kind of just let it slide, or don't take it as seriously, because it's just something that happens, you know, that part of town, and you don't have to deal with it. But then when it's a white on black crime or a police brutality, it's something that more people are affected by, or you know, can relate to, or can think, oh, that could have been me in that situation. And I think that highlights the difference. But I think that people who bring that up as an argument kind of are definitely missing the point. Like they miss, I mean, all crime is bad, black on black, white on black, police on black. And I think that when people say, well, the black on black crime happens all the time, why aren't we talking about that? It's because those communities aren't represented fairly in the media or things, you know.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't hear about it as much.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think, like she said, that, you know, all crime is bad, and I believe we all can agree that black on black, white on white, whatever is bad. I think the issue with George Floyd and those type of situations, I understand law enforcement is a very difficult job to do, and I understand it's a tough position to be in, but they're also given special responsibilities and special authorities, and with that comes, you know, special circumstances that, you know, you have the authority to arrest someone or detain someone and do those types of things, and also you have to, you know, be responsible for that person when you do those things. And I think that's sort of why it's really different than any other type of crime, because of that special authority given to them when they're sent into our communities, all communities, to police those communities. I mean, they're the people we call when we get in trouble or we have an issue. So if you call someone and then they bring an issue to you, I mean, who are you going to call at that point? It's a tough situation to be in when that's really the issue, just their special authority and special responsibility. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, because, I mean, I see, you know, as a, you know, police officer, they are in a tough tough spot. But there's bad apples in everything. I mean, even in pastoring, I know there's bad apples.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm just saying, but I mean, there's bad apples because I don't think all police, I mean, I have friends, colored, black and white, that have been police officers, even, the things that they got to deal with and the stress that they got to deal with. I mean, yes, I know it's a very stressful thing, but you took this position and we hold you at a little bit higher caliber to control yourself on how you can, handle the situation. So, I mean, it's just, but like I said, there's bad apples and all, even with the black and white, the black on black crime. I mean, it's, bad apples. I mean, you're taking somebody else's life over, and most of the time, a whole bunch of times it's something that, okay, it's not worth somebody's life over. It's just something to do or something, to do or whatever. But, I mean, it's just, I don't know. But like I said, there's bad apples. So, but, I mean, I know if I get in trouble, like I say, I'm going to call, that's who I'm calling, is the police or whatever to handle it if I can't handle it myself. So it's just, that's what you're going to do. So.
You think about the peaceful protest and the message that so many of them were sending, whether it was chants or whether it was signs, and so much of it was about equality. And Frankie, I think your phone's ringing. So much of it was about equality and equity, and I get it. I mean, in my mind, I get that everyone wants to be treated equally. I think sometimes I struggle with the image of what that looks like. I don't know, at the end of the day, what does true racial equality and equity and racial fairness and justice look like. And I think some of it is that I don't know if there's an image out there that can even convey that, or if no one really knows, it's just one of those things we'll know when we get there kind of thing. But I'm curious for you guys, like if we could snap our fingers and wake up tomorrow and there truly be racial equity and equality, what would that look like for you guys in your homes, in your families, in your jobs? What would racial equity look like?
I would think that we'll go back to the police. I would think that that if somebody is being stopped or arrested, if a black person is being stopped or arrested, that they would receive the same treatment as our counterparts would. But we know that's not true. We know that that a lot of times it's taken a little bit further. There's a little bit of prejudice that goes on because apparently assuming and being stereotyped that our young black men, they're all on drugs or what have you, or they're all up to no good, So you get this thing where that they need to be treated the same as like I said, that the white counterparts. I remember a long time ago, I went through a Scared Straight program, not for myself, but it scared me straight. But I went through a Scared Straight program, and when I went to Rawway Prison, and when we went in, we were in this dome, and in this dome, the bars went around like this, and we were on the first floor, and then upstairs there was another bunch of people up there, and they were changing lunches. And it was one thing that I noticed when I was there, that every guy that I saw was black. And I was like, wow, I know some white people are doing some wrong too, but where are they? Why are so many of our young guys going to prison for? And some things that they're going to prison for was some mild things. Maybe the judges were making an example out of them. Maybe they had a bad day, I don't know. But I was just shocked that I did not see any Caucasian people in the Rawway prison when I was there. And then when we went into the auditorium, the Scared Straight program was handled by the lifers. So these are guys that are not even getting out of prison. And they were all black. And it just shocked me a little bit, you know? And I think that, like I said, I think that, you know, you just want to be treated equally. I've heard some women say that they have gone into a clothing store, a high-end clothing store, and it seems like somebody is following them while they're looking around like they don't have enough money to purchase anything in this store. But there's somebody following them around while they're looking at items, you know? And you hear all kinds of stories like that. And I'm quite sure that, you know, that if it was our counterpart, that there's nobody following you around. They'll ask you, they might help you or what have you, but there's nobody following you around, you know, wondering whether you're going to put it in your purse or what have you, you know. Mm-hmm. But that stuff happens. It happens, and it's happening today in 2020. And it's unfortunate, you know, that we have to go through that. So I see, you know, I see that if we all were treated equally, we're all children in God's eyesight. I mean, God just made us in different colors and shades, you know. Everybody bleeds the same type of blood. We all have the same amount of bones in our body almost, you know. It's like, so what is the difference? Why is this difference there? You know, I don't understand it, you know. And it could be from the way I was brought up, too. I came from a small town in Jersey, and my dad went to high school there, and everybody knew my father. He went to school with the mayor. He went to school with the aldermans in town and what have you and everything. And you know, everybody just knew one another. And it was the same thing when I grew up. The lady that's the mayor in my town now, I babysat for her. You know, I babysat for her. So it was like, wow, okay. You know, but people, I think, you know, we just need to start respecting each other a little bit more. And I don't know, maybe we can get over this problem that we have, because it is a problem. And right now, I'm sorry to say, but with our government, the way it's going, it's not helping. Mm-hmm. It's not helping us at all. You know.
I think she brought up a good point when she's talking about sort of the criminal justice system. I think when we're talking about equality, and Patty mentioned the senseless slaying of the 5-year-old child earlier, I think that's a good example of, you know, the person who did that was, you know, arrested immediately, put in jail, you know, and he's going through the process of the criminal justice system immediately. And that's how it should be. And I have no problem with that, but I just believe that that also should be the way with all crime. You see these crimes that's in the news where, you know, fortunately someone recorded it or it's on camera, but these people aren't arrested immediately. You know, that there has to be this social media campaign to seek justice for these people. And then, you know, months later or weeks later, maybe someone gets arrested, or maybe they're not even arrested yet. And so I think that's, when we're talking about equality, you know, the same criminal justice system for people of color and people of non-color. And, you know, outside the criminal justice system, just, I believe someone mentioned about, you know, feeling like they have to maintain a certain standard or work, you know, that much harder just in your job, and you feel like maybe your counterparts don't have to do that. You know, I believe we all should feel the same way at our job, you know, even at, you know, opportunities I've had, you know, going to college and positions I've held, you know, it's always in the back of your mind, you want to do. These people think I got this job because of affirmative action, or I got this position for affirmative action. Well, you know, I know the work that I put in to get where I've been. You know, they put in the same work to get to the position they are. You know, it's just things like that, you know, that you don't have to have those thoughts in the back of your mind. Unless she indicated being followed around a store just because of your race, you know, assuming you're going to steal something. I think equality would be no one gets followed around the store. I mean, I'm sure people of color steal things and other people steal things, or the likelihood that it's 4 times more likely that I'm going to be stopped by law enforcement than, a white counterpart of mine. Those are the equality things that I think I would be looking for in a perfect world.
I think from the white perspective, equality that I wouldn't even think of, like keeping your receipt in your hand when you're leaving the store, in case somebody stops you to make sure you bought it. Like, that wouldn't even occur to me. But since being married to Jermaine, like, I keep my receipt in my hand because he had experienced, like, having been stopped and making sure those items were purchased, or driving through a neighborhood and not wanting to circle around to see a house we wanted to see again because he's like, I can't drive slow through a neighborhood, like, in circle. Like, I can't do that. And I'm like just stuff like that a white person, white privilege, I don't even consider. But equality would be, black people don't have to consider it either. And it just shouldn't have to occur to anyone, for things like that.
Yeah, and like stuff acquired, when I was living in the state of New Jersey, like when the law enforcement was stopping people, black people, falsifying their names into the state as white people's, to make it look like they was ticking in white people's. The New Jersey Police Department, the State Trooper Department, the head of that lost his job because of that. Saying, hey, on your license it tell what race you are. So how you gonna make a mistake with thousands of people? They're coming in and they had somebody investigating it, and they found out that they was ticking it to black people, but they was sending it in as they was white people.
White people, yeah.
Which is,
trying to hide the racism,
right,
in the department.
Yeah. So he lose his job behind him, and they put a new person in the position.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's not equality to nobody. That don't help the equality to people. You got people in leadership. They should be they should be to a higher standard than even to think something and do wrong stuff like that.
Yeah, you would think those people would be putting a stop to that rather than
Instead
condoning it or
right,
perpetuating it. Even more similar to your point about leadership. I mean, leadership is so important, and they set the tone and model it for us. And I think we all have biases. I know that's been the learning for me throughout all of this is biases that we all have. And if you don't have those people modeling for you how to see them and even put a stop to them, then it's so easy to give into those biases, and before you know, you're doing things that you could have never thought or imagined.
And like stuff like the big banks was done with the mortgages.
Yeah.
People, Spanish people and black people, we're gonna charge them more than we do a white guy for the mortgage. That's have their rates higher.
Yeah.
That's stuff like that. That come from powerful people. It ain't from the little guy there on the street doing that. That's from powerful people doing stuff like that. And I don't want to go back to this, but I even remember when I was a kid, my father used to sell cotton. He grew cotton. He was a small-time farmer. And I always remember, because my uncle, I have a great uncle, he had a truck. And when it get time to sell the cotton, my uncle was doing it. And we get a chance to go and get ice cream. And so my father, we said, hey, why we don't let him take it? He said, you know why I don't let him take it? I let the white guy take it for me, because they give him more money for it than they do for him.
Wow.
For the same amount,
For the same amount, yeah.
Yeah, he said he takes it down. He said, so I get $25 more for the bail than when he do.
Yeah.
And I said, well, when I grew up, I said, well, that was a little smarter for him to do that.
Yeah.
But it
We shouldn't
wasn't,
have to, right?
It wasn't,
I mean,
it wasn't
yeah.
right what they was doing, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
What about for you guys? I mean, what does you snap your fingers and things be?
My thing will be, I mean, it's going to be heaven. So the way
Yeah.
heaven will look, because, I mean, all these people that call themselves Christians, and you see how they really act and stuff. Do you think the Lord going to allow that to be going on up there? So, I mean, so I'm saying, Colin, you know, if you're a Christian, I mean, I think it's a test from the Lord, because if you can't get along down here, you're not going to be able to get along up there. So, where he's not going to have it anyway. So I guess, you know, you'll have a hell of a fun time down in hell, but you know.
See what you did there, Carl.
I'm just saying, but I just see how, you know, Christianity would be, you know, if you call yourself a true Christian, you know, we wouldn't have this and love everybody. But like I know, everybody's not Christian and everything like that. So, but that's the only. Everybody's not perfect. Everybody has that, and their sin is sin. But you know, I know. So.
I think part of to your point, yeah, we do. We all mess up. The reality is when you're confronted with it, do you address it and try to change it? And I hope these kinds of conversations may invite people to do that. This last thing that I wanted us to talk about was, you know, in my job outside of the church, we talk a lot in our workplace about diversity and inclusion. And Latasha, I know you know that. I mean, there's, and you can see it in the number of the different kinds of people, the different types of people that we work with. And I at times I think about what that looks like in the church, and I think specifically about Northside, because the vantage point pre-COVID that I had on Sunday morning was I'd look out and I'd see different cultures and ethnicities and generations and economics and political leanings. I mean, I'd see all of that, and it was so neat to see people worshiping together. I guess for me, thinking about what's happened, COVID aside, thinking about what's happened racially in our country and seeing the division and people putting things on social media that can be hurtful, what does unity in the church look like right now? What does diversity and inclusion, more importantly, I think unity. I mean, what can the church, in your mind, be doing right now to confront the problems of racism in our country? And I get that we're right here in Knightdale, but like, you know, what can we be doing in Knightdale to address this?
I mean, I think the church, and I know we didn't talk about this in small groups or whatever. I mean, if you go outside and show people what this church is doing, the love and everything as a group, and, you know, they see as everybody as together, you know, if people see it, I think, instead of just hearing about it and they actually see it, I think that's a big showing how people can have unity and get along. And I mean, even though, you know, in church, I mean, everybody's going to have their separate ideas about separate issues and stuff, but I'm not going to not like you or love you or whatever because you feel a certain way on a situation or stuff. And I mean, if people can see that, and I mean, I'm not trying to, you know, kill you or anything like that. If people can see that outside of the church, more in the community or stuff like that, I think, I mean, that's what I think, you know, the church should be able to do and stuff.
So maybe seeing one another as people rather than the labels that we put on one another.
Yeah, I think a big thing the church can do is just be a safe space to have these tough conversations, like sort of like we're doing right here now. I mean, as you indicated, the different people in the church all have different backgrounds and cultures, but we all have the same thing in common when it comes to our faith. So this is a place where we may have different views on everything else. We have that common thread, and that should be enough to let us to have these tough conversations of, let me explain my viewpoint, and I'm happy to hear your viewpoint. And we'll still have that conversation. We may not see eye to eye, but we should be able to at least have that conversation and still be able to worship together and have that faith.
And I think, too, I mean, from a minister's perspective, I look and I think the seeds of racism, I appreciate what our world is trying to do and have these conversations, but I also recognize that until a person's heart changes, it's going to be
Right.
really hard to change their behavior. And yet, as believers, we're really challenged with seeing one another as in the imago Dei, in the image of God. And if I'm willing to see people who are different than me, Jermaine, to your point, if I'm willing to see people who are different than me in the image of God, then maybe that impacts what I think racially and what I think economically. I mean, those things take a back seat to seeing this person as a brother or sister in Christ. And, in a lot of ways, as unfortunate as it is the times in which we're living, I think we as the body of Christ have a really unique opportunity to kind of model not only hard conversations, but how do you kind of live and move beyond these hard conversations to where you can still be in relationship and truly love and care for one another, and recognize that there's always going to be things that are different about us, but the things that unite us, my goodness, there are a lot more of those than there are the things that divide us.
Right.
And I think sometimes we miss that. But I really appreciate you guys being willing to have these conversations. I don't know that we've ever sat down and ever done this before at our church, at least not in this kind of formal way. And so I appreciate your honesty, and I appreciate you being willing to share even your personal experiences, and knowing that each of you have kids at different ages and what it's like to try and navigate these times. You're all having to navigate it and will have to navigate it, but also maybe hoping that this next generation will be the generation that truly sees people as people, not as black, white, brown, red, whatever it may be. So any closing comments, anything you guys want to say before we wrap up?
Say something I didn't say before.
Yeah.
One thing that I've learned, I've started reading some books since the George Floyd thing, and one thing I struggle with and have learned is just not saying anything is almost as bad as joining in with the racism and prejudice. And so I struggle with it because my first inclination is to take a step back and, I don't want to be involved. But I think that's maybe one thing the church can do too is, and I get it, as a body, it's hard to do as like an institution. It's hard to put yourself out there, but I think just not saying anything or not doing anything is as bad as doing something wrong.
Yeah. Thanks, Nicole. Well, guys, thank you all very much for being a part of this conversation. I hope both formally and informally we can kind of keep these conversations going amongst ourselves, but also amongst our church family, and hopefully in your neighborhoods and your families and your communities too. So thank you so much, and I appreciate all of you guys tuning in, and hopefully this has been beneficial for you. And as a church, one of the things that we're really committed to following this is going through a study by Tony Evans called Oneness Embraced. And so following this, you're going to have the opportunity to join that study. We're going to be doing it virtually. We'll have information tagged with this video on how you can get connected to that so that we can keep the conversation going, both with our friends and neighbors, but also with the larger community as well. But thank you so much for joining in.